Welcome to What's Cooking with the Cookware and Bakeware Alliance. The CBA supplies the industry with standards, connections, and solutions. This podcast features stories from our members and partners. Our goal is to share resources and information across the industry for consumers, retailers, manufacturers, and more. To learn more about becoming a member of the CBA, visit cookwareandbakeware.org.
Welcome, everyone, to What's Cooking with the CBA. Our podcast series has a special feature where we celebrate our members and partners and their contributions to the industry, and a special dedication to creating safe consumer products. I'm so happy to be joined today by Steve Burns, President of the Cookware Sustainability Alliance, or CSA. Welcome, Steve.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So many people who will hear this podcast know about CBA and know about CSA. And what I'm excited today is we're talking about how we're working together. And that's how things get done, right?
Exactly.
I loved meeting you and finding out your background. So I would love for our listeners to know a little bit about your background and how you got to the CSA.
No, I'd be happy to talk about it. A lot of people know early on if they want to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And I grew up in a political household. My parents were both foreign service officers. And so I actually grew up overseas, surrounded by world events and politics. And that's what I studied in school. And then for the last few decades, I won't tell you exactly how old I am, I've been either in policy or political positions, including I was staff on Capitol Hill to a congressman, and then I was a lobbyist in Washington. I've been in Sacramento, California now for the past 20 years or so, involved at state level politics. And I've been inside of a couple big Fortune 10 companies as well, but always in political and policy roles. So when I was approached by two of the larger cookware companies about 2 years ago, it was late spring, early summer of 2020 or 2024 rather. And they asked me what could they do to start fighting for the products around the states. That's why I said, well, let's put together an alliance and see what we can do together.
That's incredible. I love that background. It's true though, right? We're influenced by our parents, our surroundings, our upbringing, and that is incredible to hear. So you led that into the two big companies that came up with this idea. So who is the CSA now, and how did it get its start with those two companies?
The two companies that originally came to us were Meyer Corporation and Groupe. And as I understand it, they had been talking to each other for a period of time, again, because multiple states around the country, and we only work in the United States, so this is all about the US, but multiple states were starting to look specifically at PFAS issues and lumping in nonstick cookware with a series of other products that have very different forms of PFAS that can be harmful. But the type of PFAS, as we all know, PTFE or fluoropolymers that coat nonstick cookware, are completely safe. And so that the alliance is not intended to be a trade association. That's what you do, Fran. That's what CBA does. We know that very well, and we respect that. Rather, it's the companies that have chosen to support advocacy, because that's what advocacy is not a dirty word. It's sticking up for your right to operate and function as a company, as a business. And so they have since been joined by Tramontina and Breville and Scanpan, Scandinavian pans out of Denmark. So we're a small but mighty group of 5 companies now, and we certainly would like to grow, and we can talk about that if you'd like.
I would love that. And I will say, Steve, I love that you said small but mighty, because that's what the CBA is too. I think together we've seen the ability to, it's so important, a trade association can do so much, and then your voice and your ability and your knowledge, especially your specific knowledge and background, and I've seen it firsthand, what the impact it has had on our industry. So
Thank you.
Not about CSA or CBA, it's about both. And all the members you mentioned are members of us. Breville they're different. It's not a cookware or bakeware company, but the rest who are cookware are part of us, and they recognize the need to be part of both. And yes, this is a little shout out to CBA members too. If you haven't spoken to Steve, you need to talk to Steve. So
thank you. Welcome that.
I think it's because we learned last year, and I would love to talk about and I know we're right now at this recording where we're getting into spring. So
Yeah.
legislative sessions are ending, wrapping up at their kind of course. So I'd love to touch on legislative radar, either what happened this year or what you see coming. And one of the things that we'll get into after that is how CSA and CBA work together on that. But with legislation, what did you see happen this year? What do you see coming up on the radar?
Well, you're an optimist, Fran, because a lot of states are still going strong. I wish I could say they're wrapping up, right? I mean, California is probably going to go through August, September, just as they did last year. And
Okay.
Massachusetts will go to December, maybe even January. And I start with those two states. Of the two, as hopefully your members did notice, we had a huge victory last year in California by getting Governor Gavin Newsom to veto a PFAS bill. And his veto message was only about cookware, because we were the only product line out of any that fought that bill. So we were very proud of that. And I'm happy to say there's not currently a threat in California. But as I said, I live in Sacramento, California, and bad things can happen here quite quickly. So we're very vigilant. But we are right now working against a threatening bill in New York, in Albany, for the third year in a row. I'm confident that we'll beat it back again. But with the advocates on the other side of this issue against us are very obviously trying to pick off either California or New York, the two largest states, the two biggest blue states, the two most environmentally forward states, because they know that if they can get a victory in one of those two states, it would probably be repeated across the country. So all of our efforts right now, most of our efforts, I should say, are in New York. And as I mentioned a moment ago, Massachusetts, which also mischief can occur. But then I'm happy to say that I think the victories we had last year in 2025, we actually were in 14 different states last year, and not a single one of them passed a cookware ban. And I think that has made the advocates pause in their strategy. I'm seeing now that they're looking more at the actual effluents coming into the drinking water, which is obviously not from us, it's from the producers. And they're also looking at things like fertilizer and how it impacts their food source. So I'm hopeful, I'm not banking on this yet, but I'm hopeful that we may be starting to turn a corner. But again, we're just talking PFAS. If we talked about lead, I would say the opposite, that that's an up and coming issue, as you know better than most. And then what's going to happen, we're again in the late spring, almost summer of 2026, is the 6 states that did pass laws that ban nonstick cookware, we have to go and undo those. And we are actually in all 6 states today. We have lobbyists that we work with in those 6 states, because it's not tenable that we would walk away and say, well, we lost in Rhode Island, or too bad about Connecticut, or that's a shame about Maine. We're not going to do that. We're going to continue to work. We're going to take the victories that we've had, as I said, in California, 2 years in a row in New York. Hopefully this will be the 3rd year, the victory in New Mexico, the victory in Illinois. And we're taking those to these 6 states and saying, you need to reconsider. You're going to be standing all alone. And then I touched on lead. The regulatory fights continue in Washington and Minnesota, et cetera. So it's a lot, but it's our 3rd year of doing this, and we've got a good rhythm. We've got a great team. And I think that, we're going to continue to fight on behalf of cookware and bakeware, because that's what needs to happen. The industry needs to stay in the room and not give up and walk away.
That's a good point, Steve. I'd love to touch on in general without throwing any industries under the bus, but one of the things that those that are all our members and anyone in the industry needs to realize is we need representation, because big industries are going there and using cookware as the, can I say, sacrificial lamb?
100%. Yeah.
So,
no,
yeah.
Go ahead and ask the question. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, we have to be present.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say to that point?
There's 2 points I would say, and then thanks, because that's a central part of what I like to talk about. And the first one is, if you can use whatever AI tool that you want to use today and ask which are the industry sectors that use fluoropolymers, right? Or a variation of that question. And you'll get the answers consistently that between 30 and 35% are used by aerospace and automotive, right? These are Boeing and Airbus in every car on the road. And another 30% is going to be used by big industrial, which is code for oil and gas, or big chemical and manufacturing. And then the next one down in the 20% range are going to be consumer electronics. And then underneath that will be housing and construction. At the bottom of the list with an NA, meaning less than 1%, are 2 industries, medical devices and cookware. Medical devices are the sexy cousins of everybody. When nobody wants to take away a pacemaker, so they get an exemption. And cookware at less than 1% of global fluoropolymer use is always on the list. And here in California, we were the target. So here's the second way I would answer your question. I sat across one of the nation's biggest NGOs here in California in the waning days of the fight. And I said to him exactly what I just said to you, Fran. And I said, why cookware? And he looked me in the eye and he said, we had to start somewhere. So once we get you, we'll go after everybody else. And from a political perspective, my background, because we weren't at those tables, we weren't in the rooms for all those years, they just all assumed across the nation, let's go after cookware. They're not going to fight back. Well, they're learning differently now, but that's the whole point. We need to stick together. And every other industry I named, from automotive to aerospace to consumer electronics, they all get their exemptions because they're considered, quote, essential industries. And I can't tell you how many times everybody says, there's a lot of different types of pots and pans. Well, why are you fighting for nonstick? And I said, because the science says we should. So we need to keep at it. We absolutely do, because it's not over yet.
And you just ended on how we came together, which is the science has to stand up for itself. And we need to be the ones to stand up. And you know what, as you list that list, you're right. All those other industries, no one wants to stop using their cell phones. No one wants to see airplane and flight tickets go up even more than they are now. There's so many on their automotive. No one wants to pay more for their car. Like, there's all these major industries. So, but we were an easy target, right? So that's where we came together and said no more. And one of the ways that we're working together is making sure to provide information to the CSA, education reports, papers on great standards. And this is where not only the CSA needs support, but the CBA, we need our members to whether it's input on the papers we're writing or support to you, or hopefully both.
Yeah.
This is where we're working together. And I love the example of something as simple as when a comment period comes up or a testimony. Yes, we as a CBA send something in. We work with you to figure out what we're supposed to send in. We each then represent. Sometimes there's even like the ACC, the Chemistry Council, who put something together. And all these associations are great, but that individual comment by each member company, by each cookware company counts. And can you talk to that? How that works in the government? How they count the opposed and the for?
Yeah, and that's what they do. Again, and this goes back decades when I was a young staffer on Capitol Hill, and we get flooded. This was way before email, right? How many phone calls came in for it? How many phone calls came in against it? And then the congressperson would look at the tally, and say, well, okay, such and such. So whoever organizes best is going to have an advantage. And that's the same today, right? I can go in, and I have, and I say, I'm with a new organization called Cookware Sustainability. The first question, how many companies do you represent? Well, I have to be honest and say 2, 3, 4, or 5, whenever that question was asked, where CBA, you're in the 60s, right? Or you're around there. And so that's very powerful. So then that's one thing, is like, oh, this is the industry speaking. But then on top of that, having individual companies come in with their individual stories and examples. And again, I would tell you from personal experience, if you're headquartered, if you have manufacturing, if you have a distribution site in that particular state in which we are fighting, that's very, very important. And the Congress people, at the state level, the legislators don't want to know that they're chasing a company out of their state. That's very, very powerful, even for the most liberal member who wants to, just go on health and environmental issues. They also, affordability is the key word of 2026, as it was in most of 2025. And so affordability equals, is this going to be job loss on my watch? And no politician wants. So having individual members also weigh in, and we're happy to tell them how to do that. It's very easy. You write a letter, you go to a portal, you submit it. That counts just as much as having big CBA or smaller CSA come in. And we have done that, Fran. We've come in together and jointly written letters. And again, I would reiterate, having the person receiving this going, wow, the whole industry has its position, as opposed to a competitive position. one industry, one part of the industry is for it, one part is against it. That's the worst that could happen. We all need to stay together.
I so agree. And, there's actually something that you mentioned in the beginning, you corrected me on, and you're right. Every state, there's differences now. Some go all year, some don't take that break in the summer. And that's a big reason why joining the CSA is important, because we learn, look at what you said about the states where it's enacted, and you're going to go back to them to try to undo what was done, right?
Right.
Well, that's why getting involved now, because as you mentioned, that's on PFAS. There's a whole other world coming together on lead. We don't get ahead of these things, and it won't be the last two. There will continue to be topics. We constantly talk to the FEC from Europe, who is our counterpart over there.
Yep.
And when something happens on their radar, it comes over here and vice versa. So for our members and anyone hearing this in the industry, connecting with CSA is important, because we need to get ahead of this. And that's what you become part of CBA to help us draft the documents, the reports, the standards, and we arm the CSA to be ready to fight these battles instead of chasing down enacted legislation, which is 10 times as hard to fix.
Exactly
so
right.
What other reasons what other things should either our members or people in the industry know about joining the CSA?
Well, I'll go back to, I think I said this earlier, we are the advocates, right? We're the tip of the spear, surrounded by people who just are like me, right? This is what we do for a living. I said 14 states last year. Right now, we're in 11 states. We have lobbyists employed that we're paying to look out for the industry in 11 different state capitals around the country. And those are the ones where a fight is underway, or we anticipate, as I said, having to undo the bad things in the next year or two. But this, Fran, you said it yourself, they're going to come after us for different things. There is an emotional reaction that was triggered by PFAS, but it's now lead and cadmium. And there will be other iterations. But the emotional is, I'm cooking in my kitchen, and this may be harmful to me and my family. That's powerful, right? It's not like I'm cruising along at 35,000 feet in a 737 and what's coating the wires above my head. That's not going to carry the day. So the advocates who are trying to do this to us as an industry know that, and they play this card over and over and over. And so I would just suggest that, if this is new to any one of your member companies, I'd talk to them and say, this is okay. It's First Amendment. Every industry in the world advocates to protect it and grow its business. But this is more than protect and grow. This is to defend. And it's not just nonstick, as we just said. It's every form of cookware is now under scrutiny. And at some level, I don't want to be alarmist here, under attack. And so I think the days when we were an industry that didn't engage in a meaningful way in the political process, I would suggest, with all respect, that those days may be waning, and we just have to buckle down and get through this, because at some point, when I quote the advocate looking me in the eye and saying, we needed to go after somebody first, that will pass over time, and they'll go after other sectors. That's what they have to do. That's what they exist to do. But we just have to hunker down. And again, I don't want to appear macho here, but we have to fight back. So
I agree. And I was one of the ones concerned when we first met a few years ago. And now I see that, silence is not the answer, or waiting for, so many things we talked about this, whether it be other industries continuing to shine the light on the target on our backs, which is wrongly there based on what you said before about science, right? And I think what you said too is that this has become more of an emotional issue than a factual issue. So there's a panic and react instead of process and respond. And if there was more time to process and respond, the science would rise. And that's where your wins are, because you're being given the chance to show the science. And this does work, guys. And a general message for this whole podcast and for this whole message on what the CSA and CBA want to do is that every voice counts, and together 100%. We can do so much more. There's a book by Simon Sinek. I love the man. He wrote the books Start With Why and Leaders Eat Last. And the name of the book is Together is Better. And it's meant for a younger audience to hear his message. But I love that because it's true. Together is better. So on legislation, on topics that are impacting our industry, we need to stay together. And I highly recommend anyone listening to reach out to Steve and connect with him. Steve, I'm really grateful for your time today, for all you do for the CBA. And I'm just really, really thankful that we met you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And thanks for welcoming me to the podcast. I appreciate it. And our partnership means a great deal to me personally and to the CSA. So let's continue.
I love it. Well, guys, if you want to learn more about the CSA, you can go to Cookware Sustainability Alliance.org. And you can also reach out to me if you want to connect with Steve directly, and I can introduce you. And other than that, I thank everyone for listening, and happy cooking, everyone.
You've been listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware and Bakeware Alliance. For more resources about the cookware and bakeware industry and information about becoming a member, visit our website, cookwareandbakeware.org.